I'm excited to be here, everybody. I'm excited everybody is here. This is gonna be. I'm trying to figure out the word for this, and I would say it's more like an educational laboratory, right? Because we have so many amazing minds in the room. I'm curious of how we can get our collective intelligence of, cooperation and how do we utilize our markets to build community? How do we leverage the total gifts and talents of everybody in our ecosystem towards like the vision that we are creating? So today's going to be very exploratory and participatory. I don't know if you guys know Rachel DB, our amazing creative at Gem City Market. I forgot. I did like Bobby Lethal yesterday. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm with the Gem City Market. And so we had a question. How? Cause I want everybody to be able. We're gonna have a time. We're gonna write on the board around the room. We have 21 markers. So how should we do this?
Well, I have a red pen in my bag, so I just use it.
Okay. Yeah. Pens can work too. Yeah. So use pens. We got some markers, and we're gonna harness everything. So part of like what I wanted to explore today is the role of worker owners, right, and of the community at large, right, and how do we cooperate? So how many of you have ever been to, so like in America we have winter, spring, fall, summer, right? And so we have these names for seasons, but the name in itself doesn't indicate any kind of weather condition, right? But like, how many of you have ever been to like, I don't know, Africa during the rainy season or something where like the name of the season implicates a weather condition? A couple people? Okay, so like what is significant about like tell me about your experience a little bit. Like have you been give me your
Yeah, India during monsoon season.
Yeah, what do you experience?
Tons of rain.
Tons of rain, right? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's real like that. You know what I mean? It's like raining all the time, right? And I'm asking that because oftentimes we say we're in cooperatives. She beat me to the punch, right? But like, how much cooperation are we actually doing? You know what I mean? And I bring it up because sometimes I think like the danger of naming a thing an act is that we assume by naming it that we are the act. Mm-hmm. You know, and so like, you know what I mean? Like this could be called a cooperative doesn't mean that we automatically have cooperation. That it's even one of our goals or one of our guiding principles that we're striving to as we do that. And I want to give one of our own examples. Okay, so it must have been it was in January. So we had a meeting at the Gem City Market with our board and full staff, worker owners, and we were talking about like how to move forward, what are we doing, and all these things. And one of our worker owners, he mentioned that I came here because I thought this was a cooperative, and we are not cooperating, right? And it really struck me, you know what I mean? Because I noticed that like the power of culture, right? The power of how we are embodying these ideals, and so like that, like A, it affirms some of the things I was thinking, but also B, it also showed me that like the importance of praxis, right? This notion of like how we're bringing ideas to reality and the constant refinement, the constant, is anybody familiar with the praxis loop? Okay, let me back up a little bit. I apologize. So the praxis loop is how you have an idea, then you have action, then you have reflection, right? And so there's an idea I'm trying to implement or a theory, right? Then I try out the action, then I reflect to see like what's working, what's not working, and that then improves my theory, right? Which I then act again. So it's this continuous thing, like bell hooks.
It's a loop.
Yeah, it's a loop, right? So bell hooks, she said to know, but verify in praxis, right? So we may know that cooperatives or cooperation is the way forward, right? Because we're a single garment of destiny as human beings. You know what I mean? They're like, so how are we walking in that notion of Ubuntu, meaning that we realize our humanity by the presence of others, right? But we won't know it until we live it out, right? It's a good idea. It sounds cool. You know what I mean? But is that the actual like fundamental nature of reality, right? So this whole notion of praxis. So they had me on this journey of like, what is the gap between cooperation and cooperative, right? Because a lot of cooperatives that I've seen, including our own, right? We had more the name cooperation or cooperative, but not the action. So that's what kind of got us here today. So I wanted to explore how we understand workers, or the workers and the how we understand all these different classes of workers, right? And like how do we see the workers inside the cooperative or those that we're volunteering with as cooperators themselves, right? Because in that room, the biggest thing that I realized that day when we had that meeting was, so we had, I think, probably about 24, 26 staff at that time. And the staff, the workers were actually frontline organizers, potential frontline organizers, right? If they were trained, you know what I mean? Like they're already getting paid, you know what I mean? They're out there talking to customers, you know? But if we're not building this sense of community, you know, if we're trying to get away from like customer service per se, but like how are we creating more belonging inside of our organizations, you know what I mean? That people can feel and see themselves, right? Inside the org. And so, so I had some questions around the room, and I meant to read them off, but I think I got a little ambitious this morning. So, is there a question around cooperatives, around the type of ecosystems you're creating, the type of space that you're trying to imagine that you would like a question that we answer as a collective in this room? Because in a minute we're going to break up and we're going to walk around the room and we're going to see what comes up, right? But is there any other questions? I didn't read the question, so I know a little bit of gap, but is there anything that like a question that you would like answered?
We can have people who are close to it read out the
Oh,
question.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. And, but that reminds me. So, well, two things. I teach at a college, and I got one rule, which is no judgment zone. And I almost wrote on each one, but I was gonna be repetitive. And no judgment zone. I mean, you know, we want to honor the diverse opinions in the room, but actually, it's more of a selfish thing because my writing is super suspect, right? So I'm putting it out there now. So people are like, how you, you know, so yeah, so I'm just putting it out there in advance, so you know, I don't get clowned the whole day. Okay, but yeah, and maybe some people could read off some of the ones around them, and you want to start off, or I can?
What can food co-ops be an invitation into?
All right, so what can food cooperatives be an invitation into? If someone is by another one, they can read it off. Or I can read it off from over here. Yeah, I realize I need glasses too. How do co-ops approach cooperation? How is your market a friend or a benefit to the community? How does your co-op advance the practice of cooperation? What hinders me from greater cooperation? How can co-ops root and ground ourselves in our values? What is the role of cooperation? How can food co-ops be an invitation to greater cooperation and community? What is your co-op's North Star? What factors have the most impact on your ability to cooperate? What are your co-op's group values? How can your co-ops connect with the community? And when you hear co-op owners, staff, and board co-creating opportunity together, what do you see? What is your North Star? And how does your co-op cooperate in decision making? And how can food co-op? Okay. Is there any other questions that you would like answered in the group?
I would like to hear people define democratic process or democracy,
Okay.
because everybody seems to define it differently.
Perfect. Okay. So, how do we define?
Yeah, if co-ops are democratically owned and operated,
Yes.
but everyone has a different definition of
I like
what
that.
democracy is.
Okay. Yeah. I like
Or
that.
how it operates.
So how do co-ops define? How did your co-op define democracy,
Yeah.
or how do you define democracy? How you want to frame it?
For the purposes of this conference, how does your co-op
Okay.
define democracy? And you might get a lot of I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's real.
And
You know what I mean?
that's good, because now you know you need to define it.
Right. You know, one of my biggest things that so I do this thing called chalk talk, and you know, if you ask and I ask people, tell me the community that you want to work, live, and play in, and like they will go back and forth half hour, and then I'll ask, what does freedom mean to you? And like nobody will go to the board, or like 3 people, you know what I mean? And it's an ideal that a lot of people we talk about, but we don't know what it looks like. You know what I mean? If you can't look, if we don't know that part, then we'll never get to it. You know what I mean? Because we're not taking intentional action towards it.
Just
right?
think about January 6th.
Man.
How is your co-op actively crossing boundaries to increase cooperation?
Okay, I like that.
How is your co-op?
She said, how is your co-op actively increasing boundaries toward cooperation?
Crossing boundaries.
Crossing boundaries
To increase
to
cooperation.
increase cooperation, right? Yeah, we got all these silos, right?
Yeah.
So how that's why I like looking at like how can co-ops be a catalyst for communities? You know, like at Gym City Market, we like to look at like within the movement of those that are striving for an alternative, right? How is the market situated as a catalyst for that? You know, how is the market situated in a way where those that are for building something new can all rally, see the market as like part of that process. You know what I mean? Like part of the infrastructure that we're building towards a compelling future. You know what I mean? Because like I'm a huge believer that there's a quote by Buckmaster Fuller, and it says that like don't just try to dismantle the old, build a new so compelling that it makes the old obsolete. You know what I mean? So like how am I as an individual, and then how are the things that I'm involved in making the old obsolete by showing a different way, showing what is possible, right? Any other questions?
That led me to think about the question, how does your co-op identify the wants or needs of your community?
Okay, I like that. That's huge, right?
We got some good questions.
I told you the collective intelligence,
How can the owners operate equally with the board?
Okay, how are you defining owners?
Well, it's in the title of your.
Okay, so our co-op is a worker owner. So like we're a multi-stakeholder model. So our workers after 1 year can be on the board, and so they can serve 2 roles at one time. So like how you want to frame it? Like how can the owners
How do they retain equal input to the decisions of the co-op with the board?
Okay. So
One more time.
so how do the workers
So not
make the
just-
decision
not
with the board?
members, but workers?
Well, work equally.
Yeah, work equally. Like how do
Input equally.
workers and the board share in the decision making process?
Owners.
Oh,
Worker owners,
community owners, I heard.
Well, all owners.
all owners, so whether you're staff, worker, or,
Pay equity,
okay.
consumer.
Okay, and I like this one because I think like the real power, the biggest breakthrough I've had over the past couple of years is that we birthed our market off of looking at opportunity maps, which basically were like looking at redlining maps and then looking at like how that creates spaces for opportunity. You know, you concentrate advantage, concentrate disadvantage, all these things. But I used to look at opportunity as being external. You know, but then I started realizing that actually we co-create opportunity ourselves, right? As we bring our gifts and talents into the center of the circle, right? Like that process itself co-creates what is new. It co-creates the possibilities, right? And so like we had the power to make our own opportunities. You know what I mean? So like that was my biggest breakthrough. So yeah, I thank you for that. Okay, any others? Yep.
We're in development, we're just beginning.
Okay.
So, are there any suggestions or maybe looking at some guardrails starting out that cause issues in cooperation as you move along?
Mm-hmm. So like how as you're beginning the process of building a cooperative, how do you have a cooperative process? Okay. Cool. All right. So any others? So we're gonna spend like 15 minutes or so. Walk around the room, answer whatever questions come to you. You can even, like, if you see someone's answer and it's meaningful for you, you can start, you can add to it, right? Because we're going to have like a conversation on these walls. And then in a little bit, we'll pull back and we'll start talking about like what came out, what it means, what are some learnings and takeaways from it, right? And then we can go from there. So people, okay. So I'm an action-based researcher, and so part of action-based research is how to walk with the community instead of doing things for, doing things with, right? Building power with. How do we bring out the needs and the ideas of the community, and then build structures and institutions around that we're co-creating our shared future. So how do y'all like the process?
Yeah.
You like it? Okay, cool. I'm seeing some dope ideas, you know what I mean? So I was like, selfishly, I like to learn, so I want to harness everything I can. Okay, so let's start over here, this one. So what can food co-ops be an invitation into? I see political engagement, economic strategies, micro enterprises, Black unity, self-growth, Liz, with growth, leadership skills, ownership, empowerment, transformation. Did anything stand out for those that either put something here or about the question itself? Anybody have anything they wanted to speak out? Yeah.
I like the Black unity because I think that that's really the biggest part of it is the unity, right?
Yeah.
Whatever community you're in, it has to be unified.
Yeah, right. And I think within that, right, that like unity doesn't have to mean conformity, right? You know what I mean? It's like, but it's like, how do we exploit all areas of agreement? Like the things that we agree upon, how do we move forward, and things that we don't agree upon, don't allow those to hinder us from taking the steps that we have now, right? Because we make the road by walking it, right? And so like, oftentimes I think we get stuck. We gotta agree on everything before we take that first step. So yeah, I appreciate that.
And following up on that, the beautiful thing about unity, if you're willing to be expansive in thinking about it, is you unify your community and the co-op, and then you expand on that and you create unity with other co-ops, fulfilling another cooperative principle.
Right.
Cooperation among co-ops.
Right.
And then you keep expanding that because that's what will bring in more members.
Yeah, for sure.
More understanding of what it means to cooperate, and then we expand cooperation throughout the state, throughout the nation, throughout the...
Yeah, no, that's real, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like how these things scale up. Like Adrienne Marguerite Brown talks about fractals a lot. You know what I mean? And so like the power of the small to create the larger. So like the more that we're cooperating, you know what I mean, the more we can cooperate. within our co-ops, more we cooperate with other co-ops, right? And as we're building this cooperative ecosystem, it becomes more compelling, and then more people come in, and we expand it out, right? And so that's like the power that's in this room right now, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. As you begin to build co-ops, how do you build in a cooperative process? And I need glasses, so can you like read those?
Do you want me to read?
Yeah, if you could, please.
Sure. It says, stop, communicate, and listen, willing and open to evolve, receiving feedback, formal but also evolving policies and procedures, talk about democracy and governments from day one, respect and open mind, sociocracy practices that balance action, movement of motivated individuals with collective input, as well as the praxis loop. Listen and engage, get owners engaged to help.
Okay, okay. Anything stand out in that one?
Engagement.
Yeah, engagement. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think that getting owners to engage and help, not just, because I've been a cooperative member for 27 years, and they're actually helping us to start our cooperative, but I haven't been engaged for 27 years.
Wow.
And I haven't felt invited to be engaged for 27
Wow.
years. So I think the key word for me in that is owner engagement. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that is the powerful insight, right?
Yeah.
Because like part of the thing is that like, I'm sorry. So she had mentioned how she's been part of a co-op for 27 years, but never felt invited to be engaged, to be involved in the process. And that's a key insight, right? Because to me, I think the biggest shift for within our co-ops and in the community at large is how we move from being recipients to co-creators, right? Because the more we realize our power to make decisions, to act, right? Like that's what brings the hope. You know what I mean? And so like if I'm not involved in the process, if I'm just a recipient, if it's something done for me, right, then my hope is not being activated, therefore my action is not being activated, and we can't do, asset-based community development, right? We can't like leverage our gifts and talents, right? So that's like the key thing, you know what I mean? Like how we create this invitation, And one thing that, I've been really realizing, Dr. Nemhart in the book Collective Courage, she said something that really like challenged me to my core. So, I'm an organizer, so like I used to try to go out and get people, but then I started to realize, she said, am I somebody that people can cooperate with? Right? That's a shift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now instead of like, how do I get other people to cooperate? And like, oh, what about me is hindering the cooperation? You know what I mean? Like, am I being an invitation into this space? Right? And that keeps the power with us. You know what I mean? Like I can keep working on myself. You know what I mean? Healing myself and all of these things, right? To in that process expand cooperation. So yeah, I appreciate that so much. Okay. I'm sorry. You had a comment.
I was just going to say, we were even just talking about when you're so long working, we've been 10 years, not 27 years. And one, making sure that when you give an invitation, it's a sincere invitation. And it's not just going out and saying, you have to volunteer.
Right.
It has to be more than just trying to get
yeah.
volunteers. So it's a sincere invitation for engagement and maintaining that invitation, because after a while you get tired. So how do you do that? You bring new people in, you try to have people tell you better ways to invite, etc.
Wow.
Just to maintain it.
Yeah, that's good. Like so you made an invitation last year, you got to keep making that invitation. How do we be that invitation, to keep the blood flowing, because like I'm convinced that the earth is kind of dehydrated. You know what I mean? And like how can co-ops like increase the water on the earth? You know what I mean? Like that the body is moving in a better manner, right? Do that being an invitation.
Just building on that, one of the ways to really have a sincere invitation is to make it clear that you are sharing the power with everybody. Because that is what brings people in.
Right, 100%, right? And so, again, it's that notion of co-creating, which is foreign to us. You know what I mean? Like even though the market is open now, it's like how. So we have 5,000-ish members, right? So like, how are those 5,000 members shaping what we want to be? You know what I mean? Like, okay, so we have this space. How are we activating it? You know what I mean? Like what are we gonna do with it? What are the products we want to see? You know, all these things.
Yeah, I was just gonna expand on the practice loop one that you had mentioned from this post-it. I think that oftentimes we get stuck in the idea phase, and that there's not the movement to action and reflection.
Yeah.
And so this kind of sociocracy idea, the term can be sort of what is that a useful term? I don't know, but some of the practices I feel like have stuck out to me so like in a group setting, this is a way that I think can encourage cooperation, is that someone has a meaningful idea, and opposed to the group all saying, well, they think that idea is going to work in action, because that's what the point of trying it is sometimes.
Right.
Is that if there's like a strong exception that someone wants to raise with testing it out, then cool, and that could be like the cooperative conversation. But one of the practices is, if you have an idea and there's not a strong exception someone has, you can test it out and then come back to the group.
Exactly.
And there's like cooperative conversation for the reflection part.
Right,
Like, well,
right.
did this work? Do we need to change it? Do we need to nix it all together? So
Yeah. And so, you know, it gives a chance to, you know, if there's not a strong objection, you know what I mean, to be able to try, you know what I mean, because we won't know until we do, you know, and sometimes we can get stuck in even just doing, you know what I mean, we want to do, but we don't reflect, you know what I mean, like the reflection piece is, you know, like they say that music is the space between the notes, right, the pause, you know what I mean, so like where is that space to reflect, you know what I mean, to see what's working, what's not working, you know what I mean, to inform our theory. And, yes, I like that. How is your co-op actively crossing boundaries to increase cooperation? Oh, hey, I'll read it. Host a community food equity discussion. No judgments on volunteer capacities. Engaging with Spanish-speaking communities and learning their needs. Lead by example. Got a couple stars on that one. We need improvements in this area, +1. Having outside activities, inviting the community to participate, block parties, cookouts, teaching kitchen, lots of outside community engagement. What is your cooperative's financial institution that created Racial Justice Committee? We are handing community owner members tools to compete with large corporations who has caused harm in our communities. Work with neighborhood associations, sharing event space and planning. All right, any takeaways, insights?
I was saying, my co-op, I used to be the board president of a food co-op, but now I'm the board VP for a financial institution called Shared Capital Co-op.
Okay.
And one of the things that we did this year, because for financial institutions historically, there's been some real issues around BIPOC communities, people of color communities, and the money that they need to rise up, to scale up. And we created a racial justice committee. Actually came out of a marketing committee, but it wasn't really addressing, it was using old models that work for white communities, but not necessarily black. And so what do we need? What do we need to talk about? And out of that racial justice committee that has the majority of its members are people of color, to have those conversations, to lead those conversations.
Right.
And it's already helping.
Yeah, that's powerful. You know what I mean? Because the people most impacted need to be at the table. You know what I mean? Like, we need to center the voice, right? So I appreciate that. And one other thing that, when I think about this question is, what is the power of co-ops to build more of a beloved community? You know what I mean? Like how are we living into this thing of like what is our common humanity, right? And having spaces where we can live that out, right? How do we embed dignity, right, into the process, you know? How does your community co-op identify the wants and needs of your community? We have community workshops, questionnaires, surveys, open board meetings, market studies, surveys, door knocking, attending community events to speak and build relationships with residents, weekly community meetings, whole listening sessions. Any thoughts?
Has anyone had success taking it to a digital platform?
Good question.
We haven't implemented it, but I've wondered if it's worth our time to try to get at least our tech competent members into a Slack or a Discord, something for internal conversation rather than external and public conversation. I haven't presented it to the group, but I've seen success with it on my other teams, and I wondered if it would work with this group.
Our board and volunteers all use Slack, and we've actually been considering putting a new channel in for owners.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
We
I
could
think
use a mural board to bring people to, mural boards to bring people to, I don't know, does everybody know Miro?
Miro,
Okay.
Miro.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been using it because it helps you think on your own even while you're in the community space. Right? And then you can create Post-it notes on there and put it out there, and people are reading what everyone else has written, and that generates ideas.
Right.
So,
I shoot next thing that I'll get you. Yeah.
So we have Slack, which I actually really like that idea. But we have used Facebook groups, which is pretty common, but it works for us when they're private, and then community members are able to be a part of it, and also community partners, local businesses as well too. So it's just kind of most of the time they're just posting things that are happening in the community, but conversations do generate.
Yeah, I think it's a good question of how can technology build more mutual understanding, right? As we're
Yeah, so we actually did this in our last board meeting where we used a web application because it was a Zoom meeting with a member meet, our annual member meeting. So we broke that up with doing a survey using mente.com, which and did a couple of things. What it does is actually, it's just like these, but it creates a word cloud. So people can see the
that's
word
powerful.
cloud instantaneously as people are entering data.
Oh, I love that. What was that? What's the name of it?
Menti.com.
Menti?
Mentimeter. MENTIMETER.com.
Wow, I
It's
love
great
that.
for Zoom meetings.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful insight. Teresa?
Yeah.
In some ways, hinders your ability to connect with the elderly.
So again, that's the nuance of technology and crossing boundaries, right? So how do we incorporate those that aren't on internet as much, how we connect them into the process. So yeah, that's a good nuance to think about. How does your co-op define democracy? Majority rules, all-inclusive, one voice, one mind, open communication, consensus decision-making, one person, one vote. Disagreement brings the best decisions. Like creative tension, okay? Each owner has a note. This is not enough. Each owner has a vote. This is not enough. Majority vote is unanimously supported. Any thoughts? Democracy, that's a big one, right?
I think it's way more than that,
Okay.
but I wouldn't be able to put up anything other than the things that, it's like defining the word AND.
Right.
What does and mean? Well, it's 16 pages.
right. That's the shoot. I'll get you.
So when we're, tabling at community at the markets and things like that, we're like, this is a democracy. You have to vote. You can show up to meetings. You can volunteer. But I think we're missing an element of that, of just the concept of mutual aid and it being a process that's continual rather than once a year.
Yeah. It's a continuous process. It's a learning process too, right? And I think it's the key to building power, right? Because we got to know our agency, right, and our ability to determine our shared future intentionally together, right?
It also involves open information.
Mm.
And your vote is inherently flawed if you aren't using all of the information that everybody else has. So transparency with financial situations and goals and timelines of those goals, so that everybody can have the same baseline understanding, and then implementing the voting system allows for a functional result.
Right, right. So that's the key thing, right? Well, we can't talk about democracy. We're not talking about transparency, right? And how they work hand in hand. Yeah, I appreciate that. So how would your market a friend or benefit to the community? Our prices are reasonable. We're open 7 days. Being an active advocate for other forms of cooperation, farming, farmers markets, etc. Bringing back the social aspect within community events, partnering, networking, because we understand the need to work together, well-paying jobs, support local shared values. There aren't any grocery stores within 2 miles of our community, so we will provide fresh food within walking distance. Working for sustainability, sharing information, jobs, economy, sustainability, healthy food, access. Any thoughts, takeaways, feedback? How do you guys see your co-ops? Do you see it as being a friend or a benefit, or how do you envision it? Yeah.
I am with Team Mother Market as well, and we're still kind of getting to brick and mortar, so we're not open yet, but our vision is for what we are community center. We're going to also have like a community kitchen that also to kind of bring back that social center of the grocery store.
Yeah.
So that's what we're
I see. I say, good thing, that's part of the differentiational. I'm sorry, can't talk. But, like how we distinguish ourselves, right? How do we heighten the contradiction, right?
Yeah, I'm Beth with the Silverton Co-op in Silverton, Oregon, and we're a rural community with lots of farmers. So our vision is very farmer-based on how those farmers just need more and more ways to connect and get their locally grown food into our community, and our community members need it, but it's probably the farmer direction that sparked us to get going.
Yeah, thanks. No, I love that. You know what I mean? Like, so how do we connect and utilize the farmers in the area towards? Yeah, that's powerful. How does this is one of my favorite questions actually. So how does your co-op advance the practice of cooperation, merging workers, consumers, and supporters as owners? We respect the work of communication and our need to continuously practice getting better at it. Coming to co-op conferences to learn from others, I say. Building strength by learning from other co-ops. Accountability to ourselves and each other. Yeah, I like that. We are good at it. Practicing and learning to do better. Let's practice. Just by doing in our everyday lives. Thoughts, reactions. How many of your co-ops are grounded in the spirit of cooperation? Okay, couple. Yeah, good thanks. Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about it a little bit before. You know what I mean? But like how we really root in that, right? Because that's how we build our trust, right? And then the trust is what enables the cooperation, the collaboration, the coordinated effort, right? And so like all that hinders, I think, on that. What hinders me from greater cooperation? Ego, silos, territorial folks. Easier, faster to work alone. That's real. Capitalism and competition seen as inherently good. Never seen it modeled. Time takes longer to move from individual ideas to collective consensus ideas. Yes, and we got a big arrow, agree. Good process that allows easier movement to action in community. Lack of participation and inclusiveness. Overwhelmed with board workload. That's real. My pride. Swimming in capitalist soup. And then we got a +1 on that one. Struggle. That's why I love collective intelligence, right? Struggles to motivate owners to participate. Finding doers with the time. ways of the past we've always done it. We've always done that way. We tried that before and it didn't work. Well, as in quotation marks, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, how many times have you heard that, right? Time for engagement. Characteristics of white supremacy. The urgency. Worship of the written word. And efficiency and impatience. And that got like 3 stars. Lack of collective enthusiasm. Need input of different ages, races, background, gender identities, etc., etc. Yep, that's real. Micromanagement. Lack of trust, poor communication of expectations, and conflicting values. Wow. That's deep. Yeah.
I didn't write on either one of these, but one of the big things that I just realized that we had like a big issue and we found a way to resolve it. So
Okay.
one was time. Was the biggest one for our board in getting everyone engaged.
Yeah.
And how we resolved it was we hired a staff member for engagement. And engagement went way up with a lot more volunteers, a lot more interest, and our membership is growing much faster than, and it wasn't a focus on membership, it was just a byproduct of that. We wanted to keep people engaged.
So you hire someone to just focus on engagement. You know, like
Outreach, yeah.
Right, outreach. Okay, so you had an outreach person. You know, like that was a big takeaway that we had. So, you know, like our initial kind of steering committee, for lack of a better word, was about like 20 people from, you know, community, union, governments. We had a wide swath, right? But we weren't able to really make a difference until we had that first person. We had Leela, right? That was her full-time job, you know? So like when you have someone that can wake up every morning and that's what they think about, that's what they do, it was amazing how things started to move, because they can attend meetings and, you know what I mean? It was just like it was night and day difference, you know? So thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts? Can't get that word. Temple, I think. No, temple. I don't know. So how can our co-ops be an invitation? Any other thoughts?
With our co-op, which has been working at this for about 5 years, 2 of our co-op board members who started out as volunteers were elected to city council, and a bunch of people started getting onto city committees, and we've had like these volunteers sort of spread out into other volunteer roles in the community.
Wow. That's how you build power, right? That's how you're building this idea, you know what I mean? So I appreciate it. And you know, one thing I forgot, and I apologize, I know what that is, so like, why are you doing it now? But if you could mention your name and your co-op too, so because I just want to build deeper relationship too, right? So I know it's late, but.
So we're Whitewater Grocery Co. and we're Whitewater, Wisconsin, an hour south of here.
All right, good thing. Any other thoughts, feedback on this one? Okay. Let's see. What is your co-op's North Star? Watering a food desert. Oh, got the water again. People with communities with greatest needs, a need, inclusivity, access, filling the void of lack of grocery stores, the ability for anyone to become an owner, empowering Black residents to monitor, manage the economic structure, health, food in their community, ownership, bringing food power to our community, having a diverse collective group, regional, gender, race, etc., having food co-op in common, removing the current silos in politics. Any thoughts? The North Star. You know, I think our why is so important. You know what I mean? Because, you know, it gets rough sometimes. You know what I mean? It gets strenuous. You know what I mean? You got to battle sometimes inside your organization. You got to battle sometimes outside your organization. You know, and so like that why, you know what I mean, can help you spur you along the way, right? Is there any of them that like really stood out to you that we have not done yet? Okay. How does your co-op cooperate in decision making? We use consensus-based decision making. We listen to all options, let everyone speak. Owner surveys, all staff meetings and staff surveys. Board consensus and voting. Conversation and majority vote per bylaws. Conversation, eventually voting. Majority rules, consensus and practice, majority voting by laws. We could use more. Asking others if they be willing to speak. Inviting. Yeah. Any thoughts? Decision making. Anything stand out? All right. How can your co-op connect with the community? Asking questions, listening, acting, reflecting the community, survey, churches, reflect the community leadership, staff, and members. By holding events to involve the community, leadership meetings, info sessions, plant a seed. Events for youth, attending community organized events, meet the leaders. Bringing healthy eating as a new idea. We love to eat. Host community events and have a space open to cooperation and open meetings, old school block parties. Yeah, I'm down for that. Host fun events to encourage all from community, music, food, etc. Any thoughts? How our co-ops can connect with the community? Yeah, and so if you guys, I forget his name, the last session I went to, it's the author of that book about practicing cooperation, and he makes that big distinction of we have the internal and the external. So the external is we gotta sell products and we gotta make enough money to stay open, all these things. But there's this internal value or a good too, right? So how are we building these deeper relationships, right? How we're expanding our we. You know what I mean? Like these block parties and the social aspect, I think, is critical, especially coming out of COVID. All right, we'll do one more. Okay. All right. What are your co-op's root values? Equity, openness, transforming local food systems, transparency, ownership, community autonomy, creating healthy lives for people of color. Viability of local community equity, putting unity back in the community with a smiley face. Yes, love it. So solidarity, the highest form of love, and lost in the list of cooperative values. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Ownership and feeding ourselves, access to local communities, and reduction of social environmental destruction. Anything else about root values? Yeah, you know what? I appreciate the loved one, because again, sometimes I forgot. So King in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. He said, he talks about how love, or agape love, right, unconditional love is community. You know what I mean? And so like I think oftentimes, again, with missing the spirit of cooperation, it's probably because we're not rooting ourselves as love, right? As like a goal to become and live out amongst each other. Because we're operating in fear, then you're going to end up in competition and all these things, right? But the more that we're rooted in love, then we're building these bridges, and we're understanding that we're a social body, right? Or a symbol of destiny, as King talks about. So I appreciate it. Any thoughts in closing? Yep.
This has been amazing.
Oh, get back to that. Right? It could have been bored or it could have been exciting. It is all up to all of us.